Alex Newhook's contract has to be coming up soon for the Montreal Canadiens. But just how much is he going to make and for how long? A new article posted today breaks down some thoughts about it, and I'm going to give my own thoughts on the situation. Plus, 3 Montreal Canadiens are ranked in the top 60 for Dynasty Fantasy Hockey Leagues. And finally, we have a little note about Jonathan Drouin and what he said about the Montreal Canadiens very recently, so stick around for this edition of Habs Digest. Let's get into the first thing here. Newhook's contract could end up being a steal for the Montreal Canadiens, and I say steal maybe kind of lightly. Maybe it's not going to be the biggest steal in the world, but regardless, it has potential to be amazing. A recent article by the Hockey Writers kind of broke down some similar players on the Habs, Raphael Harvey-Pinard, I know that sounds kind of crazy, but we'll explain that in a second, and Kirby Dach, and how those 2 contracts can probably help us figure out exactly what the Habs are willing to give Alex Newhook. So let's get into it. So they talk about how Raphael Harvey-Pinard last year actually had a higher point pace than Alex Newhook and ended up playing about 4 minutes more per game than Newhook. And you can see Harvey-Pinard got regular ice time with the top line with Suzuki because of the injuries with Montreal. And with Newhook's acquisition, there's a realistic chance that previous assessments of Harvey-Pinard fitting into the top 6 are no longer realistic, but that same projection for Harvey-Pinard could now fit Alex Newhook, who's also maybe not quite as rugged as Harvey-Pinard going into the corners and stuff, but he still does do it, and he's very, very fast and plays exactly the brand of hockey that Montreal wants. So let's talk about that, right? Raphael Harvey-Pinard just signed a 2-year, $2.2 million deal. Now, what's the difference between the two? Well, the difference is Alex Newhook already has a couple of seasons of the NHL under his belt, plus he played in the playoffs for a stacked Colorado Avalanche team, and he has a Stanley Cup, but recently he was relegated to the 4th line on a very deep team. Now, what does this mean for him coming to Montreal, right? Well, Raphael Harvey-Pinard, when given the chance, showed that he really fit into that top 6, and he earned himself this $1.1 million per year kind of prove-it deal. The thing with Alex Newhook is I feel like the Habs can't give him that little money because he has so much more experience. Again, he has that Stanley Cup, and even though technically his point pace, he played all 82 games last year, but his point pace, point per game, was lower than Raphael Harvey-Pinard, so that kind of takes it down a notch. But I really don't think these two are that comparable. I mean, the Hockey Writers try to make the comparison, again, just comparing money-wise, but I think where we can start to really get a feel for Alex Newhook is when we compare that Harvey-Pinard contract to the Kirby Dach contract. And this is the picture I accidentally flashed a second ago, but they mentioned when the Habs signed Dach, he was it for all intents and purposes, right? They didn't know Monahan was going to work out as well as he did, so Dach stopped playing as much center as maybe they expected, but regardless, they said Newhook theoretically just has less leverage than Kirby Dach did, right? He was coming in as sort of the guy to play center, but now Newhook's kind of, well, we don't know if he's really going to play center. If he is, it might be 3C if we move Dvorak, or maybe he proves he's better than Dvorak, or will he fit on the wing? Not as much of a certainty for Alex Newhook. But they say Dach is more valuable to the Habs right now, and Dach, of course, signed that contract worth about $3.3 million per year over 4 years. And they say that's even a touch high, even with inflation, but for Alex Newhook. So they mentioned that Newhook could make between $2.5 and $3 million as a nice hypothetical sweet spot. Now, they also go on to say that the Habs will probably want 4 years, similar to the Kirby Dach deal, but Newhook himself and Newhook's camp are probably not going to want that, right? They know that Alex Newhook is a fantastic player, very skilled, very fast, can provide a nice spark to the team on any given night. So, you know, his points last year I don't think reflect the actual player he is, especially if, again, he can kind of do what Raphael Harvey-Pinard did last year, except maybe with less injuries, right? Newhook just is given that shot up on some of the higher lines right away, not needing any injuries to make it up there. And if he can prove that he fits with some of those guys like a Kirby Dach, or maybe even you play him across from Cole Caufield on the wing with Nick Suzuki, one of them's playing on their off wing, but I don't think it's that bad because Newhook and Caufield both shoot opposite-handedness, so it could really work out. So I think that Newhook is probably going to want a bit of a shorter contract to prove he can fit with these top guys, but for right now, I think they're right on the money. I think that about $2.5 to $3 million is about right, but I personally think it's going to settle somewhere in the 3-year, $9 million total range. So a 3-year contract worth about $3 million per. I think they're going to give him a bit more than maybe what they suggest here in the Hockey Writers article because they traded assets for him. They clearly see something in Alex Newhook. They gave away picks in quite a good draft to get this guy, to give him an opportunity in Montreal. So I'm projecting a bit less than the Dach deal, just because, of course, Dach had that pedigree, 3rd overall pick, wasn't working out in Chicago. Newhook has shown quite a bit of flash of skill in Colorado, but has just been buried behind so many good players. So I'm thinking about 3 years, $9 million total. Come back to this video once the contract is eventually signed, and we'll see how close I was. Let's go on to the second topic today. Let's take a look. ESPN released their Dynasty Fantasy Hockey League rankings, as in, which fantasy hockey player should you pick if you have a league that's going for the next 5 years, right? These are picks that you make this year that you want to still be good 5 years out. And there's a couple of Habs names that you'll definitely recognize here in the top 60, or well, at least in the top 40. But the guy at number 60 maybe will surprise you, maybe won't, but let's just take a look. So, we got here number 35 and 36, back-to-back. As expected, because, you know, these guys are going to be tied together probably for the rest of their careers. Cole Caufield and Nick Suzuki. Caufield being the 5th ranked right winger, even though he plays, I guess, a little more left wing in Montreal, but hey, whatever, that's fine. And Nick Suzuki ranked the 14th best center. But what I want you to take a look at is the players around these guys. And I think ESPN, I think Caufield should probably be ranked a little bit higher because I genuinely think he'll be a top 10 goal scorer in the NHL every single year. So I'd personally have him easily in the top 30, but, you know, I'd have him above someone like Dylan Cousins, who I still like, but, you know, whatever. It is what it is. But look at some of the guys below him. They truly think Caufield and Suzuki better than Seider, better than Eichel for the next 5 years. Eichel's not old yet, don't forget. Better than Boldy, better than a guy, a Vezina winner in Igor Shesterkin. It's really impressive, and if you look down at number 45, better than Pierre-Luc Dubois. So very, very interesting from ESPN ranking these two. Not surprisingly back-to-back, but to see them both in the top 40 is awesome. Let me know what you guys think of these guys' rankings, and whether or not you think that they are worth picking this high in a Dynasty League, because personally, me, I would have both of them higher. I would probably have both in the top 30. Nick Suzuki, I understand from a fantasy perspective, maybe he's not as enticing from purely fantasy hockey perspective, because, you know, maybe in the past he's only put up 60-something points, but I truly believe Nick Suzuki is a point-per-game player when his line mates are healthy and when the team is healthy. And yeah, there's a lot of them in the NHL now, but Nick Suzuki doesn't get a ton of penalties, right? He's always on the ice, he's always getting assists, he's always laying the body a bit more than some other guys, so I think he should be up there. And again, of course, I already spoke my mind on Caufield, but those aren't the interesting parts of this. The interesting part is they have Juraj Slafkovsky at number 60. Now, I know number 60 to you guys might seem maybe it's high, maybe it's low, I don't know, but they're projecting that within the next 5 years, Slafkovsky is going to be, I want to say, borderline top 50 fantasy hockey player, ahead of guys like Jesper Bratt, who just signed a massive extension with New Jersey, Kyle Connor, who has been one of the top goal scorers in the NHL over the last 5 years, and even higher than someone like Matty Beniers coming off his Rookie of the Year campaign. So I thought this was awesome, right? And it makes a ton of sense. Juraj Slafkovsky has such a heavy shot. He has so much potential, not only on the offensive end, to score lots of points, but he's going to lay the body. He's a big guy. He's going to block shots once he eventually gets more used to the NHL ice. And it's just really cool to finally see one of these outlets kind of ranking Juraj Slafkovsky, and maybe they didn't even mention any other Habs prospects there in the top 100, I don't think, but to have Slav already up there is pretty awesome. Now, they're missing out on someone who I think will end up being quite a good fantasy hockey player in Cayden Guhle, but that might take a couple years for him to come around to it. But regardless, I just think it's great to see the Habs getting some representation, especially on the Slafkovsky front, that maybe we don't see that often. Final thing for the video, just in the last minute here, Jonathan Drouin speaks about leaving the Habs, and I mean, it's nothing direct, but it's just an interesting article. There was an interview between Nathan MacKinnon, Jonathan Drouin, a Colorado Avalanche beat reporter, kind of talking about how MacKinnon brought in Jonathan Drouin. They asked Drouin, like, hey man, what was the last few years been like? He said, I think I needed a fresh start. Obviously, there were a lot of ups and downs in my 6 years in Montreal. I'm super excited to get a fresh start somewhere new. I'm just hoping to help him any way I can, try to find my game again. I know it's there, it's just a matter of confidence. And this is kind of what we expected, right? It's exactly what us Habs fans have been saying. Like, look, love Jonathan Drouin, but he needs a fresh start. He just hasn't been working. But at the same time, like, if you're a Colorado fan and you're hearing this, it's like, yeah, I mean, he'll maybe have a chance to play with better line mates, but I don't know. Like, Drouin's been saying this for the last few years. I genuinely wish him success, but it's at least good to see that he's kind of self-aware, right? He knows he needed a new start. The fans, the management knew he needed a fresh start. And, you know, hope the best for him. He tried with Montreal. It didn't work out. It is what it is at this point. So go play with Nathan MacKinnon. Try and get some points on his wing, and we'll see what happens. But that'll do it for this news edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Help us hit 7,000 subs. We're getting closer every single day. Thanks to you guys. I'm Josh Gosse. We'll catch you in the next one.